Reborn in Hong Kong in 1978, he embarked on a life of freehand brushwork. His name is Lin Daoqiu, and he has just turned 18 this year. Keywords of the novel. Rebirth of Xiangjiang in 1978 with no pop-ups, Rebirth of Xiangjiang in 1978. Download the complete set of TXT, and read the latest chapters of Rebirth of Xiangjiang in 1978. Chapter 1. The Best and Worst Times. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The Best and Worst Times. Lin Daoqiu, 18 years old, fugitive from Hong Kong. There is a set of old clothes that have been flipped over under the bed, and the style is unique to mainland China. Moreover, there is a badge pinned to the top pocket of the clothes, which are all obvious features. Staring at the ID card on the table for almost half an hour, the photo on it was clearly his own, but Lin Daoqiu still couldn't accept the fact in front of him because it was all too unbelievable. At that time, he stumbled and fell off the cliff. He thought he was destined to die, but he never thought that when he woke up, he would suddenly realize that he had become someone else and was also a lucky person who successfully escaped to Hong Kong. At this time, the wall calendar shows that the current time is March 1978. Lin Daoqiu couldn't explain what was happening before him, so he had to put away the brand new ID card on the table with trembling hands. Forcing himself to calm down, he then began to search the inside and outside of the house. In this small house, which was only 100 feet long, there was no other furniture except for a wooden bed, a table, and 2 chairs. It was incredibly clean. There is a rent receipt in my pocket, dated the day before yesterday, which means that Lin Daoqiu rented this room 2 days ago. Dong dong dong. A sudden knocking on the door scared Lin Daoqiu out of his chair. Who is that? Lin Daoqiu took a breath and asked loudly in a very casual tone. Ah Qiu, I'm Ah Ming, a man's answer came from outside the door. It sounds like someone you know, but fortunately the other person gave their name first, otherwise it would be awkward. He took a deep breath at the door, then smiled on his face. After Lin Daoqiu finished all this, he reached out and opened the door. Opening the door, he found a young man standing at the door, but before Lin Daoqiu could speak, Zhang Zuming said ahead of him, "Let's go quickly, otherwise we won't be able to make it in time." Before Lin Daoqiu could understand what was going on, he was urged by Zhang Zuming to quickly lock the door and then leave with the other party. On the way, Lin Daoqiu found out through indirect investigation that Zhang Zuming was a nearby resident. Lin Daoqiu helped him a little on the day he moved in, and the two became good friends from then on. Knowing that it was not easy for Lin Daoqiu to find a job in Hong Kong at the beginning, Zhang Zuming usually helps him pay attention to whether there are any suitable jobs for Lin Daoqiu. Coincidentally, today he met one. Watching a movie can earn you 50 yuan, Zhang Zuming proudly extended his palm and shook it in front of Lin Daoqiu. At this time, the monthly salary of an ordinary waiter ranges from 800 to 1,000 yuan, and watching a movie at night can earn 50 yuan, which is already a very good part-time job. But Lin Daoqiu didn't believe such a good thing could happen. He looked puzzled and said, "Ah Ming is not joking, is he? Do you want to pay me to watch a movie and also give me money?" "Silly guy, I don't have so much free money. Just 2 movie tickets cost me 16 yuan. I'll give you 50. Don't worry, not only will someone invite us to watch a movie tonight, but there's also money to take." Lin Daoqiu still didn't believe in such a good thing. He even suspected that Zhang Zuming had been deceived. Under Lin Daoqiu's questioning, Zhang Zuming finally explained the reason. The big shot of Zhongzi Tang invested in filming a kung fu film, which will be screened at midnight tonight. They paid someone to be a cane-biting gang, so I brought you along. Zhang Zuming explained the situation in a few words. In this era, every weekend at midnight in Hong Kong, new films to be released would first come to test the waters and see the audience's live response. If the response is not good, the director and screenwriter will re-edit or modify the dialogue according to the preferences of the on-site audience. And those who come to watch the midnight theater will cheer or curse along with the plot while watching the movie, and some people may even be so emotional that they throw sugarcane on the screen. Later, these people became known as the sugar-biting gang. It was already over 9 o'clock from home, and Zhang Zuming and Lin Daoqiu rushed to the outside of the theater as it was almost 11 o'clock. At this time, there were only a few minutes left until the movie was released. Before entering, Zhang Zuming didn't forget to buy 2 sugarcane and handed one of them to Lin Daoqiu before entering together. As soon as Lin Daoqiu and Zhang Zuming entered the theater, there was already a bustle of people inside. He grabbed Lin Daoqiu and quickly found a seat to sit down. Shortly after they sat down, the lights gradually dimmed, and the movie officially began. Lin Daoqiu felt something was wrong with the name of the movie, Flying Dragon Fist, not only because the name was not well named, but also because in his impression, he had not even heard of the movie, let alone watched it. In the late 1970s, the most popular films in Hong Kong were undoubtedly kung fu films. In 1978, out of the top 10 box office films, 6 were kung fu films, and there were even more kung fu films outside the top 10. Many people, seeing the hot market of movies, have poured out money to invest in filming. Some not only want to make money, but also want to fulfill their star dreams, and the male protagonist of Flying Dragon Fist happens to be one of them. Unfortunately, this play was already destined to fail from the beginning, and it is unclear which screenwriter wrote the script. The male lead of this play had almost no literary play from beginning to end, and he almost played from beginning to end. More than 90% of the literary dramas rely on the heroine and a group of supporting role to talk desperately there. If they were not there, I'm afraid the film would be even more ugly. This movie, Flying Dragon Fist, has a total duration of 96 minutes, but within half an hour of the movie's start, someone started cursing directly. You're a street thug who only knows how to fight back and forth from start to finish, refusing to say a word more. It's simply insane. This guy is not anyone either. He looks really bad. If he were to become a villain, he would definitely become famous, but he's not qualified to be the male lead. Under the guidance of a group of sugarcane-biting gang greeting with their sugarcane in their hands, the movie ended with an unhappy ending. It is believed that based on the reactions of the live audience, the outcome of this play is already obvious. Wait for me at the door, I'll go collect the money. Zhang Zuming has been sleeping there almost since the movie started, so he wouldn't waste time watching such a bad movie. After separating from Zhang Zuming, Lin Daoqiu came alone to the entrance of the theater, ready to wait for the other party to come out and go back together. But as soon as Lin Daoqiu stood firm, he heard a furious voice coming from behind. "You 2 street thugs, how dare you make me look ugly in public? If I don't kill you today, I won't be called Filong brother." Lin Daoqiu turned around and found a male protagonist who looked very similar to the one in Flying Dragon Fist, punching and kicking 2 people, one tall and one short. After seeing the person being beaten clearly, Lin Daoqiu suddenly remembered a sentence spoken by Wen Jun: "This is the best and worst moment of Hong Kong cinema, even the people on the road are rushing through this muddy water." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Key to Cultural Drama. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Key to Cultural Drama. Fei Long, we don't want to either. Please don't fight anymore. If we continue to fight, we will die. Zheng Danrui and Wen Jun begged for mercy repeatedly. They had previously hidden behind to observe the reaction at the scene. Although the film was not over yet, the 2 already knew that they were doomed this time. These 2 unlucky guys are currently working as screenwriters at Lide Television, the predecessor of Asia Television. Wen Jun has been in the industry for 2 years, while Zheng Danrui is just a rookie who is about to graduate from university. Because the market for the movie was really good, Fei Long, who was eager, wanted to invest in making a film on his own. However, he couldn't even find good screenwriters and directors. So, with the introduction of a friend, he found 2 people who were currently working as screenwriters in a TV station. If they had teamed up in future generations to make a movie, the box office would definitely not be too bad, and even at this time, their ability to write scripts would not be inferior. But what's strange is that such a thing actually happened. If it weren't for watching Flying Dragon Fist just now, Lin Daoqiu would probably find it very strange. Tell me not to fight. Do you know that I invested a full 200,000 yuan in it? You even said this play would definitely become popular, but has it become popular now? I have become a laughing stock among others, and I, Fei Long, have lost face. Fei Long became more and more excited as he spoke, his eyes wide open in anger, as if he was about to swallow Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui alive. This guy is a person with great face. I originally thought that even if he didn't make much money from this movie, as long as he could make himself a big star, it would be good, so that his reputation would become more and more prominent. But as soon as he heard the audience mocking him in the theater, Fei Long immediately became furious. He felt like he had been fooled by Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui. Zheng Danrui and Wen Jun, who have already been beaten to the point of bruises and bruises, have no choice but to film this scene well. But now that it's done, they don't know where the problem lies. Don't say I'm ruthless, I don't need you to pay back the money. I'll have each of you with one hand, so everyone can be even. Fei Long had someone fight Zheng Danrui and Wen Jun, pretending to take them away. Fei Long, don't do it. We know we're wrong, let us go, and we'll find a way to return the money to you. Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui started shouting anxiously when they heard that Fei Long was going to waste their hands, but the other party ignored them. Lin Daoqiu was immediately startled upon hearing this. If Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui were really deposed by Fei Long, would they still become well-known screenwriters and directors in the future? I'm afraid this will really become an unknown number. In fact, as long as Lin Daoqiu stands silently on the side without speaking, this matter has nothing to do with him, but he has watched many movies of these two people from childhood to adulthood in his previous life. If he really didn't save him, wouldn't it be too inhumane? Fei Long brother, please wait a moment. Lin Daoqiu thought for a moment, but still bravely walked forward. Fei Long, who was about to leave, suddenly heard someone calling his name. He turned around and found that it was a young man who was one head taller than himself. In his impression, he couldn't recall seeing this young man before. What's up with you? Fei Long looked at Lin Daoqiu and asked. This movie turned out to be like this, but it doesn't really have much to do with them. It's better to ask Fei Long brother to spare them. As soon as Lin Daoqiu finished speaking, Fei Long frowned. He first looked up and down at Lin Daoqiu for a while, and then asked, it's not related to them. Are you saying it's related to me? As soon as Fei Long finished speaking, the younger brother next to him immediately shouted at Lin Daoqiu, and the atmosphere at the scene suddenly became very tense. However, Lin Daoqiu was not very afraid, after all, he and Fei Long had no deep hatred. The other party was just a troublemaker and not a killer. At most, they would only beat themselves up. Fei Long kept staring at Lin Daoqiu, only to find that when his little brother shouted at him, Lin Daoqiu appeared calm and even looked at him with a smile on his face, looking somewhat daring. Lin Daoqiu shook his head and said, I didn't mean that, I just don't know if Fei Long wants to hear the truth or lie. Fei Long glanced at Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui next to him. In fact, he still doesn't know why this movie is not popular. Since Lin Daoqiu said he knows the reason, Fei Long really wants to know. Then tell me, if it really doesn't have anything to do with them, I'll spare them today. Fei Long suddenly pointed at Lin Daoqiu halfway through and said, but if you dare to talk nonsense, I'll throw you into the sea to feed the fish. Not long after the theater had just ended, there were still many people coming and going in and out, and as the protagonist of a bad film, Fei Long was occasionally recognized by others, so he decided to take Lin Daoqiu and the three of them to the alley at the corner of the theater. Now you can speak, Fei Long signaled, asking his subordinates to guard the surrounding roads and not give Lin Daoqiu and his team any chance to escape. I have something to ask Fei Long, are you investing in filming to make money or become famous? Lin Daoqiu first asked Fei Long this question. For Lin Daoqiu's question, Fei Long actually had an answer in his heart. Of course, to make money, one must also become famous. Fei Long's answer was already within Lin Daoqiu's expectations. He nodded first, and then suddenly pointed to Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui, who were already scared and trembling, with a swollen nose and face. Fei Long thinks these two people really have such great abilities. Can they help you make money and become famous? When asked by Lin Daoqiu, Fei Long, who had already calmed down by now, didn't need to think much. One of these two guys had just entered the industry for 2 years, and the other was just a newcomer. If they were really so talented, how could they not be hired? I was really dizzy at first, thinking that the market for movies was so good now. I could make money by hiring 2 screenwriters and directors to make a movie, but now it seems that he is overthinking it himself. From the expression on Fei Long's face, Lin Daoqiu knew he had heard what he was saying. Even if it's my fault, they are still screenwriters from the TV station. If the scene wasn't filmed well, wouldn't they be right? Fei Long was a bit dissatisfied. Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui were also screenwriters. Is it true that they didn't make any mistakes when the scene was filmed like this? Lin Daoqiu shook his head and said, the whole scene is not really a problem, it's really exciting, but the biggest problem is still with Fei Long brother. Originally, Fei Long didn't think much of the first half of the sentence, but in the second half, Lin Daoqiu directly blamed him, which made Fei Long quite dissatisfied. You'd better speak clearly. If it weren't for what Lin Daoqiu said earlier being reasonable, Fei Long would have started beating him now. The most important aspect of a martial arts film is undoubtedly the martial arts scenes, and the excitement of the fight is important. However, if you play from beginning to end, the audience will also feel bored, and at this point, you need to use literary plays to overemphasize the plot. Lin Daoqiu looked at Fei Long with a smile and said, Fei Long's lines in the movie are pitiful. I'm afraid it's not the screenwriter's intention to do so. I guess it's because Fei Long can't memorize his lines, right? If it weren't for the first time I saw Lin Daoqiu today, Fei Long would have thought he was a member of the crew, otherwise how could he have known so clearly? Fei Long, who had never attended school since childhood, could not recognize a single character except for his own name, making it more difficult for him to memorize his lines than to cut him a few times. Therefore, Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui had to do everything possible to compress and reduce his lines. But in doing so, it becomes what we see in the movie now. It is clear that the hero is almost dumb, and the male supporting role in the movie speaks more than him. How can ordinary audiences stand this, let alone the lengthy martial arts scenes from beginning to end, which are enough to make people tired of watching the movie? Wen Jun and Zheng Danrui on the side were almost moved to tears when they heard what Lin Daoqiu said, because the fact is, as Lin Daoqiu said, Fei Long can't memorize his lines. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fake Fool and True Essence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Fake Fool and True Essence. When Lin Daoqiu mentioned it, his face turned red. The last thing Fei Long wanted people to know was that he couldn't memorize his lines. If their peers in the industry find out, wouldn't they be laughing their teeth out? Those guys would definitely say they can't even memorize their lines and still play some male lead. Is literature and drama really that important? Although Fei Long didn't understand movies, he felt that Lin Daoqiu's words seemed quite reasonable when he heard them clearly. Lin Daoqiu nodded and said, that's for sure. Fei Long, please imagine, it's like when you have only vegetables and no food, or vice versa, what would happen if you only have food and no food? You can drink beer, but you don't have to eat. Isn't drinking enough? The little brother next to him suddenly joked. Fei Long turned his head and slapped the guy's head. He gave him a fierce glare and said, if you have the ability, don't try eating rice for the rest of your life. I dare not. The little brother quickly covered his head and retreated to the side with an apologetic smile. Turning around, Fei Long suddenly stared at Wen Jun and Jing Danrui beside him, as if considering something very serious from the expression on his face. The two unlucky ghosts who had been worrying all night were suddenly looked at by Fei Long like this, and their hearts were immediately raised to their throats, worried that Fei Long would chop their hands again. But unexpectedly, Fei Long's face, which had always been tense, suddenly changed into a smile, which caught everyone present off guard. "How do you call me, sir?" Up to now, Fei Long still doesn't know what Lin Daoqiu's name is. "My name is Lin Daoqiu, and Fei Long Gu can just call me Daoqiu." Lin Daoqiu felt a bit puzzled by the sudden change in Fei Long's emotions. Even if he was convinced by himself, he shouldn't be like this. Fei Long smiled and nodded, saying to Wen Jun and Jing Danrui, "You're lucky tonight. With Daoqiu speaking for you, I won't chop your hands today." Upon hearing this, Wen Jun and Jing Danrui felt as if they had been granted amnesty. They were so happy that they almost burst into tears. They quickly thanked Fei Long, saying, "Thank you very much, Fei Long, thank you very much, Fei Long." Fei Long raised his hand and interrupted the two's thanks, then shifted his gaze to Lin Daoqiu. I don't know why, but Lin Daoqiu felt the way Fei Long looked at him, like a man seeing a beautiful girl, as if he had to get her hand. Is he a fag? Lin Daoqiu was so scared that he couldn't help but tremble. He had no interest in this kind of thing at all, and didn't want chrysanthemums to be in danger. If he had to choose between his own chrysanthemum and the hands of those two guys, Lin Daoqiu would definitely not hesitate to choose to protect his chrysanthemum. Listening to what Daoqiu just said, "Do you seem to understand movies very well?" Fei Long asked a question that puzzled Lin Daoqiu. In fact, there is nothing to hide about this. Although Lin Daoqiu is not a professional filmmaker, he has watched movies for decades and knows a little about this, but lacks practical experience. Fei Long Gu praised it. "I don't know anything about movies, I just casually said it. If there is anything that makes Fei Long Gu unhappy, I apologize to you here." Lin Daoqiu's attitude was still very sincere. After all, he didn't hit the smiling person when reaching out. Moreover, Lin Daoqiu felt that from now on, this guy named Fei Long didn't seem to be an unreasonable person. However, just as Lin Daoqiu thought this matter would come to a peaceful end, Fei Long suddenly gave him a heavy blow. "My boss once said that in life, one must never give up halfway. If you want to make a movie, you must make something out of it." Although Fei Long had not finished speaking yet, Lin Daoqiu had already felt something was wrong. Before he could speak up, he heard Fei Long continue, "Today I gave you face to spare them. Then you also gave me face and helped me make a good movie. Let's even talk." The smile on Lin Daoqiu's face froze instantly. He couldn't figure out where Fei Long was interested in and even wanted him to make a movie. Is the other person crazy? "Fei Long, I just swam from the mainland for less than 2 days, so how could I possibly make a movie?" "You'd better hire someone else." Lin Daoqiu quickly shook his head and refused. In fact, Fei Long initially thought that Lin Daoqiu was not a local of Hong Kong, because his accent and his slightly malnourished face gave some clues from these places. "My boss also swam from Chaos Han back then, and now he can be my boss. Why can't you help me make a movie? Are you looking down on me, Fei Long?" Fei Long suddenly put away his smile and put on a serious expression. Lin Daoqiu found that Fei Long's logic was really flawed. How could he and his boss get together? He's a person who doesn't play cards according to common sense when he sounds good, and a lunatic when he sounds bad. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly became very quiet, and everyone's eyes were fixed on Lin Daoqiu, as if waiting for him to make the final decision. But just as Lin Daoqiu was still pondering whether to agree to Fei Long suddenly burst out laughing. "Ah Chiu, you said you just came swimming from the mainland, so you definitely don't have much money. Now that there is such a good opportunity in front of you, you are still hesitating. Don't you think this is strange?" Originally, Lin Daoqiu thought Fei Long was a fool, but now he suddenly realized that the other person was not actually foolish, and his perspective on things was also very unique. He suddenly guessed his own thoughts. Fei Long, actually I'm not hesitating. I really don't know how to make movies, so I dare not agree to you. Lin Daoqiu quickly found an excuse to explain to the other party. But Fei Long clearly didn't have much patience. He frowned and said, "Ah Qiu, if you don't agree, then I'll have to cut off their hands." As soon as Fei Long finished speaking, the little brother next to him cooperated and rushed to the side of Wen Jun and Jing Danrui, pretending to take them away. Lin Daoqiu was somewhat dissatisfied and said, "Fei Longgu only said before that he let them go. How can you go back on your word now? I used to spare them for your face, but if you don't give me face now, then of course I won't keep my words." Fei Longgu put on a look of disrespect towards Lin Daoqiu. How could a person who can achieve the status of a flying dragon be a fool? If they continue to provoke him, they may not know what will happen by then. After thinking for a few seconds, Lin Daoqiu lifted his head again and said, "I can help you shoot a movie, but Fei Long brother has to agree to a few conditions." Fei Long nodded without even thinking and said, "Tell me, as long as your request is reasonable, I will definitely agree to it. Firstly, everything in this drama is up to me. Fei Long brother is not allowed to interfere. Secondly, Fei Long brother cannot participate in this drama. Thirdly." Lin Daoqiu turned around and glanced at Wen Jun and Jing Danrui, "Let them get involved with me." "Okay, no problem." Fei Long didn't even think about it and agreed to the demands that Lin Daoqiu had mentioned. However, Fei Long is not a fool either. Before leaving, he left a sentence for Lin Daoqiu. "If the film produced this time is still a bad one, then you should prepare a coffin for yourself." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Making Kung Fu Films. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Making Kung Fu Films, huh? I almost finished today. After Fei Long left with the people, Wen Jun, who breathed a sigh of relief, collapsed on the ground. He thought he was doomed this time, but he didn't expect to be able to survive in the end. Jing Danrui next to him is not doing well either. He is just a college student who has not graduated yet, wearing glasses and looking very refined. He has never been beaten like this before, and even now he still looks frightened and uncertain. "Brother Qiu, thank you very much this time. If it weren't for you, we would have really been in trouble this time." Jing Danrui didn't forget to come over first to thank Lin Daoqiu. Wen Jun, who was sitting on the ground, quickly stood up and said, "Brother Qiu, if it weren't for you, our hands wouldn't have been able to be saved. You are our lifesaver." Thanks to two future giants in the film and television industry, Lin Daoqiu couldn't help but feel a little proud despite his efforts to restrain himself, but he didn't show it on his face. "You're welcome, both of you. I'm only 18 years old this year, so just call me Daoqiu. And this time, it's not entirely your fault, I'm just telling the truth." Lin Daoqiu shook his head humbly, not taking all the credit for it. When Wen Jun and Jing Danrui heard Lin Daoqiu say that he was only 18 years old, their faces almost simultaneously showed surprised expressions. At such a young age, he didn't even tremble when talking to the big shot of Zhongzi Hall, and the whole process was calm and composed. Even if he was a 30-year-old person, the two of them believed it. Although temporarily out of danger, Jing Danrui and Wen Jun couldn't be happy because if they messed up this time, it wouldn't be just a matter of one hand. "You guys go back and rest first. We'll talk about it when we meet tomorrow." Lin Daoqiu patted the shoulders of the two. Jing Danrui and Wen Jun also knew that their current state was not suitable for discussing business, and it was already a little over now that it was time to rest. Before leaving, Wen Jun left a phone number for Lin Daoqiu, and then took Jing Danrui away. "Ah Qiu." Suddenly, Zhang Zuming's shout came from outside the alley. He came out of the theater and found that Lin Daoqiu had no entrance. He thought something was wrong with him and quickly ran out shouting his name. Lin Daoqiu shouted outside, "Amin, I'm here." After finishing speaking, Lin Daoqiu quickly walked out. Zhang Zuming heard Lin Daoqiu's answer and rushed over. As soon as he saw Lin Daoqiu, he looked anxious and asked, "Where did you go? I thought something happened to you." "I just encountered a little trouble, but it's okay, let's go back." Lin Daoqiu didn't tell Zhang Zuming what had just happened. Although it felt a bit strange, since Lin Daoqiu had nothing to do, Zhang Zuming did not continue to inquire. On the way back, Lin Daoqiu suddenly found a topic to talk to Zhang Zuming. "Amin, how are you doing at your current job? What can I do? I just do odd jobs at the restaurant. I can't afford to eat or stay for 800 yuan a month, and I can't make much money even if I'm hungry." Zhang Zuming works as a laborer in a tea restaurant. Due to his poor family, he never attended school when he was young. In his teens, he started working to support his family. After work, he also had to find part-time jobs, which can be considered a very difficult time. "By the way, there's a staff member at my store who's going to resign. Tomorrow, you can come with me to see the boss. Although you can't make much money at the tea restaurant, at least you can't starve to death." Zhang Zuming was quite righteous towards Lin Daoqiu and always wanted to help him find a job. "I am just a person who has just come swimming from the mainland." Just because I helped him a small favor at that time, Zhang Zuming has always remembered it in his heart and has been thinking for himself. It is difficult not to move Lin Daoqiu. "Thank you, Ah Ming, but I already made an appointment with someone yesterday to go for an interview today." Lin Daoqiu is not interested in working at a tea restaurant. If he hadn't met Fei Long, perhaps he would have considered it. When Zhang Zuming heard that Lin Daoqiu had already found a job, he was quite happy for the other party. Then you should act positively. If those bosses see that you are not proactive in your work, they will not hire you. By the way, what kind of job are you looking for, Daoqiu? I have a friend who works as a screenwriter, and he introduced me to a job of doing odd jobs on set. Lin Daoqiu has not told Zhang Zuming about himself yet, and he plans to bring Zhang Zuming out after he stabilizes. Wow! Ah Ming has a friend who works as a screenwriter, so amazing. You must introduce me to him in the future, maybe I'll have the chance to meet those big stars too. Zhang Zuming looked very happy for Lin Daoqiu. "I will definitely introduce myself to you if I have the opportunity in the future," Lin Daoqiu said as he hugged Zhang Zuming's shoulder, and the two walked back home, chatting and laughing. The next day, Zheng Danrui and Wen Jun took a few days off together, and they couldn't reach the TV station with their current appearance. Sitting at home all morning, Wen Jun never received Lin Daoqiu's call, and Zheng Danrui next to him also looked very anxious. They even suspected that Lin Daoqiu had lost his phone number. "Jun, what should I do if Daoqiu accidentally loses his phone number?" Zheng Danrui couldn't help but ask. Wen Jun thought this question was foolish, but it's not impossible either. He looked at Zheng Danrui with a gloomy expression and said, "How do I know what to do? If he's gone, then we'll have to come. This is really unfortunate." Due to the mishandling of the previous scene, the confidence of these two guys has been greatly undermined. They are not as confident as they were at the beginning of the show, but now they have become powerless and unable to write the script. Ringing. Just as when Jun and Jing Dan were in a state of extreme anxiety, a phone call scared both of them and made them jump out of their chairs at the same time. The two of them first glanced at each other, but Zheng Danrui first realized, "Jun, hurry up and answer the phone. This is your home." Upon hearing Zheng Danrui's words, Wen Jun quickly nodded and immediately picked up the phone. "May I ask who?" Wen Jun silently prayed in his heart, hoping that it must be a call from Lin Daoqiu. "I'm Daoqiu, I'm at the tea restaurant right now. Please notify Ollie and come over together." "Ollie is right here with me, we'll be there right now." At this moment, Wen Jun felt Lin Daoqiu's voice was as beautiful as a heavenly melody. He asked about the location of the tea restaurant and immediately rushed over with Zheng Danrui. When Jun and Zheng Danrui arrived, they found Lin Daoqiu sitting there drinking coffee and waiting for them. They didn't dare to ask why it was almost afternoon when Lin Daoqiu called them and made them wait for a whole morning in vain. If they were to know that Lin Daoqiu was simply oversleeping, I don't know what they would think. After the two of them sat down, Zheng Danrui couldn't help but ask, "Qiu, what are you planning to shoot for this drama?" "The best-selling movie right now is Kung Fu movies, so I still plan to shoot Kung Fu movies this time. Lin Daoqiu has been authorized by Fei Long to lead this play." When Jun and Zheng Danrui are still in their new roles, and with Lin Daoqiu's understanding of the movie last night, they think there should be no problem. As for Lin Daoqiu's decision to make Kung Fu films this time, they don't think there's anything wrong with it. Although the previous film was a failure, if when Jun and Zheng Danrui were to choose one more time, they would still choose Kung Fu films. After all, this type of movie is currently the favorite among everyone. In fact, Lin Daoqiu doesn't want to make other movies. He just doesn't want to make too much money for Fei Long, otherwise the other party will definitely try to force him to continue making movies for him. You should know that at this moment, Lin Daoqiu is alone with only Zhang Zuming as his friend. How could he possibly outcompete the big shots of the Zhongzi Hall? Therefore, he can only hide his mistakes and temporarily accumulate some experience for himself, waiting for the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Master Qian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 6. Heavenly Descending Actress. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Heavenly Descending Actress Anan and Adong are a pair of brothers who have been following Fei Long for 3 years. They have been going through life and death with Fei Long for these 3 years, and can be said to be his most trusted pair of subordinates. If Mr. Lin has anything to do in the future, just give us a command, and we will always be by your side during this period. As the eldest brother, Dong looks much more mature than Nan, while his younger brother, Nan, looks quiet and doesn't like to talk much. After his elder brother finished speaking, he just nodded to Lin Daoqiu and didn't say a word from beginning to end. Thank you both for your hard work. Lin Daoqiu did not show any resistance towards these two people, even though they were sent by Fei Long to monitor him. In fact, even if Fei Long didn't do this, Lin Daoqiu would kindly remind the other party until Fei Long sent someone to his side. It's not that Lin Daoqiu likes to be followed by people, but he needs the people under Fei Long to follow him, so that he can avoid a lot of trouble when filming. It is difficult for him, as a newcomer from mainland China, to produce a movie without attracting the attention of others. Even if Zheng Danrui and Wen Jun are willing to listen to him, those actors, directors, and even dragon and tiger martial artists would have to put in a lot of effort to make them execute their orders 100%. Before, there was a flying dragon in nature, and no one dared to cause trouble. But this time, if it were himself, Lin Daoqiu was 100% certain that there would definitely be people on the scene who would not obey him. And the presence of Adong and Anan can help resolve those troubles for themselves. After all, they are equivalent to the spokespersons of Fei Long. Who dares to disobey them when they go there? Although filming hasn't started yet, Lin Daoqiu is already planning for the future. However, he needs to go and cash the check in his hand before the bank closes. It was already 4:30 p.m. when I arrived at HSBC, and there was still half an hour before the bank closed. However, there were still a few people in front of Lin Daoqiu. If we continue at this speed, we don't know if we can withdraw the money today. At this moment, Lin Daoqiu suddenly noticed a guy standing nearby who looked like a bank manager. He thought for a moment, then turned around and walked towards the other person. "Hello, may I ask if you are the supervisor here?" Lin Daoqiu asked the other party. "Not bad, sir. What can I do for you?" The supervisor nodded. "I want to redeem this 200,000 yuan check and open an account." "I wonder if I have to queue up there like most customers," Lin Daoqiu said as he pulled out the check. When the supervisor saw the amount on the check clearly, he quickly shook his head and then changed to a smile, saying, "Of course not. Sir, please come with me to the VIP room. I will have someone handle the cash you want to exchange immediately." In Hong Kong in 1978, the average monthly salary was around 1,000 yuan, and at this time, 200,000 yuan could be considered a large sum of money. If Lin Daoqiu withdraws 200,000 yuan, it will have an impact on the performance of both the supervisor and staff. Therefore, the staff and management of these banks will try their best to ensure that customers continue to deposit the money in their banks. Being invited into the VIP room, the bank supervisor personally poured a cup of English black tea for Lin Daoqiu. As for the check, he had already handed it over to the counter staff for processing, and also helped Lin Daoqiu open an account at the bank. Carrying the black tea brought by the supervisor, Lin Daoqiu suddenly felt that having money was really good. He didn't have to queue up and could still be invited in to drink tea slowly. No wonder people around the world love money so much, including him. I don't know what kind of business Mr. Lin does. Judging from your youthful and promising demeanor, there is definitely a bright future ahead for you. The bank supervisor's mouth seemed to be filled with honey. The supervisor is polite. I can't talk about being young and promising, I just barely make a living. Lin Daoqiu waved his hand and pretended to be very casual. The bank has so many people coming and going every day, and as the supervisor here, he has seen many people, but Lin Daoqiu gives him a completely different feeling. Basically, young people like him nowadays are all very proud and won't have such a calm expression. If you don't say it, you would think he's already in his 30s. The supervisor secretly memorized the name of the young man in his heart, thinking that they might meet again in the future. When Lin Daoqiu was bored and idle, he turned his head to look out of the window of the VIP room. Suddenly, in front of the counter, he saw a beautiful figure with a slim figure wearing sunglasses. If anyone has watched The Legend of the Condor Heroes, they will all fall in love with the character Huang Rong. In Jin Yang's works, she is intelligent, delicate, and has extremely agile eyes. She has been with Guo Jing from beginning to end, never giving up. In the eyes of most people in later generations, the most impressive character still comes from Huang Rong, played by Wang Miling in the 85 version of The Legend of the Condor Heroes. It can be said that her portrayal of Huang Rong has become an indelible classic. Before Wang Miling, there were actually people who played Huang Rong, but very few people mentioned Guo Yuhua, who played Huang Rong in the 78-year film The Legend of the Condor Heroes, produced by Shaw Brothers. Once it's done, let me know and I'll go out for a walk. Lin Daoqiu couldn't sit still as soon as he saw the other party. He had originally planned to find an actress to play with Yuan Biao, but he didn't expect to meet someone here for himself. When Guo Yuhua had saved all the money and was about to turn around and leave, she had just turned around and suddenly realized that not far from her was a young man looking at her with a smile on his face. Guo Yuhua, who has a somewhat mixed-race appearance, has been popular among boys since childhood. She has been playing a role in Shaw Brothers films since the age of 8. Her first Shaw Brothers film was portraying a childhood female lead in Shan Shan. However, after her contract with Shaw Brothers expired at the age of 13 and was recommended by Yujiro Ishihara, Guo Yuhua left Hong Kong and went to study at RB's Dongbao Art School. It was not until the year before last that she returned to Hong Kong to sign with Shaw Brothers. Last year, Xiao Shi only assigned her one role, playing the role of Jiang Yuhan in Dream of the Red Chamber, starring Lin Qingxia and Zhang Aijia. In this play, Guo Yuhua portrayed the famous actor from the Zhongshuan Prince's Mansion Theatre troupe vividly, and her male appearance was also impressive, not inferior to Lin Qingxia who starred Jia Baoyu at the time. Only a few people know that Guo Yuhua will become a rising star highly praised by Shaw Brothers this year. She will star in 4 consecutive films, but the most outstanding one will still be her role as Huang Rong in the sequel to The Legend of the Condor Heroes. Guo Yuhua didn't know Lin Daoqiu. She thought he was just an ordinary fan who recognized her, so she didn't think much. She just nodded lightly at Lin Daoqiu and pretended to leave. Miss Guo, can you give me 2 minutes? I have something to say. Lin Daoqiu quickly walked forward. Sorry sir, I don't seem to know you. Guo Yuhua looked at Lin Daoqiu with a puzzled expression on his face. Actually, what I want to say is very simple. I want to invite you to play the female lead in a movie, Lin Daoqiu said with a serious expression as he watched Guo Yuhua finish these words. As soon as Lin Daoqiu finished speaking, Guo Yuhua suddenly covered her mouth and smiled, as if she had been amused by Lin Daoqiu's words. Please feel free to click on the collection recommendation. Thank you all very much. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Women Who Don't Love Money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Women Who Don't Love Money. Sir, since you know my surname Guo, you should also know that I am currently an employee of Shaw Brothers. If you want to hire me to film, you should go to Shaw Brothers to talk to the person in charge, rather than blocking my way here. Although Guo Yuhua is only 18 years old, she has grown up on set since childhood and has seen much more people and things than ordinary people. It is basically impossible for ordinary people to deceive her. Lin Daoqiu shook his head and said, Miss Guo is too worried. The reason why I'm here to talk to you about this is to seek your opinion first. My opinion. Guo Yuhua was stunned for a moment before she began to carefully examine Lin Daoqiu. The other party is wearing a regular shirt and pants, with a slightly dark skin and a pretty face, but a bit too thin. From this perspective, she couldn't believe that Lin Daoqiu was someone who could make movies. After all, he looked too young. At his age, most people in the production team were just miscellaneous workers, so there was no chance he could make a movie. If Lin Daoqiu is a wealthy child who wants to approach him by throwing money, then Guo Yuhua may disappoint him, because she just got engaged to Lin Jianyue, the second son of wealthy businessman Lin Baixin in the city last year, but soon after, she broke off the engagement. It is said that Lin Jianyue hoped to have a virtuous wife who was willing to stay at home and teach her children, but Guo Yuhua insisted on seeking his own career in the entertainment industry, so the two terminated their engagement. There is another rumor that Guo Yuhua proposed to terminate his engagement because he couldn't bear to be abused, but this statement is a bit unreliable. But no matter what the statement is, it can be seen that Guo Yuhua is not a vain woman. If she really liked money, she would have been willing to marry into the Lin family as her second youngest grandmother, instead of working hard to make movies like she does now. I'm sorry, sir. I'm not interested in what you're saying. If you really want to invite me to film, please go to Shaw Brothers tomorrow to talk to the person in charge. If they agree, then I won't have any problem. I'll have to apologize in advance. At this time, Guo Yuhua was not yet familiar with Lin Daoqiu, so she inevitably became wary of him, which is understandable. Guo Yuhua had already finished speaking, so Lin Daoqiu shrugged and said, in that case, I won't disturb Miss Guo. We'll see you tomorrow. Originally, Guo Yuhua thought that Lin Daoqiu was going to continue to entangle, and she even prepared to call the bank security. However, she didn't expect that Lin Daoqiu was quite polite and didn't continue to entangle. Could it be that he really came to invite him to film? Guo Yuhua shook his head with a bitter smile as he left. She didn't need to worry so much. Whether it was true or false would only be known tomorrow. Watching Guo Yuhua disappear from his sight, Lin Daoqiu pouted and showed a regretful expression. He didn't have any ulterior motives towards Guo Yuhua, he just wanted to chat with the other party about the script, but unfortunately Guo Yuhua didn't give him this opportunity. When Lin Daoqiu left the bank, he withdrew 5,000 yuan. Although these were all for filming expenses, he only had a few dozen yuan on him now. He still impersonated the money he got from biting Qian last night. What if he didn't have money on him? Just as Lin Daoqiu was passing by the glass showcase, he suddenly stopped and looked at the reflection of himself in the showcase. The two brothers from the southeast stood behind Lin Daoqiu. They didn't understand why Lin Daoqiu suddenly stopped and didn't leave, and they were still standing there staring at themselves in a daze. Is he a very narcissistic person? People rely on clothes and horses rely on saddles. First, go buy a few sets of clothes to repair your body. Lin Daoqiu murmured a few words in a low voice, then turned around and walked into the nearby shopping mall, and the Southeast brothers quickly followed suit. Money in this era is still very durable. I bought 3 sets of clothes and shoes, as well as 2 sets of suits, and spent less than 2,000 yuan on Lin Daoqiu in total. Originally, Lin Daoqiu thought that the Southeast brothers would come up to stop him from spending money like this, but he didn't expect them to say a word and even take the initiative to help carry bags, just like they were acting like little brothers for him. Mr. Lin also needs to change his clothes, otherwise it will be difficult for others to believe you. No wonder Miss Guo was so vigilant about you just now, just like guarding against thieves. Adong just stood beside him, and he heard all the conversations between Lin Daoqiu and Gui Yuhua. Lin Daoqiu didn't expect to encounter someone who encouraged him to spend money. He was very satisfied with Adong's words. In order to reward them, Lin Daoqiu took his Southeast brothers to a famous hot pot restaurant in the evening, and the 3 of them went in and had a big meal. Poor Wenjun and Zheng Danrui were currently working hard to write a script. They didn't even care about eating, so they could only cook 2 bowls of noodles and take a few bites, and then continue to lower their heads to write. If they were to know that Lin Daoqiu was indulging in a hot pot restaurant at the moment, they wouldn't know what their thoughts would be. But it was in such a desperate state that in just one night, 2/3 of the script for Young Master Qian had already been written, and the 2 exhausted individuals each fell asleep on the table. As long as they were given a day, they could finish the manuscript. The next morning, Lin Daoqiu called Wenjun out of his house because he was going to Xiao's company today to discuss Gui Youhua's loan agreement. If there was no one to accompany him, he might not even be able to enter Xiao's door. Brother Qiu, Wenjun looked as if he hadn't woken up. He had been writing until early morning last night and had only slept for 4 hours until now, when he was awakened by Lin Daoqiu's phone call. Are you okay? Didn't you all sleep last night? Lin Daoqiu didn't expect these 2 people to fight so hard. Just by looking at Wenjun's eyes, he knew he must have stayed up late last night. Brother Qiu, don't worry about us. If it weren't for you planning the plot well, we wouldn't even have the chance to work hard now. Wenjun waved his hand and looked indifferent, because staying up late to write articles was a common occurrence for them. Lin Daoqiu shook his head with a bitter smile. It was difficult for him to say anything, but fortunately, Wenjun and Zheng Danrui were still young, so staying up late didn't matter much to them. After the draft was completed, the 2 of them could relax. Is there anything I need to do when Brother Qiu asks me to come out? The first version of the script can be written today. If there's nothing urgent, I want to go back now and write the script as soon as possible. Wenjun was still thinking about the script at this moment. You don't have to worry about the script, just let Ollie be in charge of writing it. Your current task is to go find the female lead with me. Looking for the female lead. Who? Wenjun still doesn't know what kind of female lead Lin Daoqiu is looking for. However, judging from the script spoken by Lin Daoqiu before, this female lead must be able to play. Even if she doesn't know how to play, she must have a foundation in dance, otherwise this drama will not be easy to shoot. Don't ask so many questions for now, just follow along and you'll know. Lin Daoqiu didn't tell Wenjun who to look for, and Wenjun didn't dare to ask more. Lin Daoqiu asked Dong to find a car to come over. If he always walks, he doesn't know how much time he will waste, and it's also very inconvenient without a car. It wasn't until the car arrived at the Shaw Brothers filming site in Clearwater Bay that Wenjun realized that Lin Daoqiu was actually looking for Shaw Brothers actresses. However, even so, he couldn't guess which actress Lin Daoqiu was looking for, as there were quite a few Shaw Brothers actresses. You should know Gui Yuhua, the one with the stage name Niu Niu. Lin Daoqiu asked Wenjun after getting off the car. I know each other. When I first arrived in Li 2 years ago, she was still hosting a program, but soon she returned to Shaoshi. It turned out that Qiu Gu wanted to invite her. Wenjun still knew about Gui Yuhua. And last year, there was such a big incident between Gui Yuhua and Lin Daoqiu, which caused a lot of trouble in the city. It was also difficult for Wenjun not to know her, but after all, would she be willing to take on this drama? Wenjun has great doubts about this. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Difficult to discuss. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Difficult to discuss. Let the Southeast brothers stay in the car and wait, while Lin Daoqiu only led Wenjun towards the administrative building of Shaw Company. After entering, Lin Daoqiu came to the front desk lady and said, "Hello, I would like to see the director of your drama department." "Sir, what's up?" The front desk receptionist looked up at Lin Daoqiu and asked. "I would like to invite artists from Shaw Brothers to make movies." "Excuse me, do you have an appointment, sir?" Lin Daoqiu shook his head. He didn't even know anyone from Shaw Brothers, and the same goes for Wenjun. If it were a later generation of Wenjun, it wouldn't be so troublesome, but now he's just a little-known screenwriter. The front desk receptionist didn't seem to have encountered such a situation for the first time. She smiled and said, "Please go to the drama department on the 3rd floor to see Director Huang." After thanking the other party, Lin Daoqiu walked towards the 3rd floor with Wenjun. When climbing the stairs, Lin Daoqiu instructed Wenjun, "You should go talk to him this time." Wenjun turned his head to look at Lin Daoqiu, with a puzzled expression on his face. He didn't understand why Lin Daoqiu didn't talk about it on his own. He was just a newcomer with little experience. Lin Daoqiu explained to Wenjun, "You are the screenwriter of Lied, and I have no identity. If I go to talk, the other party will be somewhat worried." Upon hearing this, Wenjun felt that Lin Daoqiu was right. He quickly nodded, but after taking a few steps, Wenjun still hesitated and said, "But I can't speak. What should I do if the conversation goes wrong?" "Don't worry, with me by your side, you just need to follow the normal procedure. The bottom line is to lend her 20,000 yuan for a month," Lin Daoqiu whispered in Wenjun's ear. 20,000 yuan is a reasonable price for Gui Yuhua to make a movie at this time. After all, the actors at this time are thinking about how to perform well and have no other messy ideas. But if we look at it in future generations, with the incident between her and Lin Daoqiu last year, and the popularity of being promoted as a couple by Lied for her pairing with Leslie Chung, Gui Yuhua's value is likely to increase by countless times. After arriving at the 3rd floor, Lin Daoqiu and Wenjun asked about the theater director's office, and they arrived at the entrance of the office. Then Wenjun reached out and knocked on the door. "Please come in." Soon a man's voice came from inside, and with permission, Wenjun and Lin Daoqiu pushed the door open and walked in. Director Huang looked up and noticed that 2 strangers had entered. He looked at each other with a puzzled expression on their faces. "Are you two?" Director Huang looked at them and asked. "Hello, I am Wenjun, the screenwriter of Lied. I am here to invite Gui Yuhua to star in a movie." Wenjun quickly explained his intention to the other party. Upon hearing this, Manager Huang was momentarily stunned for 2 seconds, and then he let out an exclamation. "Please take a seat, both of you." Director Huang greeted Wenjun and Lin Daoqiu to sit down, and then he poured a glass of water for them. However, during the pouring process, Director Huang's mind was running rapidly. It's not uncommon for people from other companies to hire actors from Shaw Brothers to film, it's just why they approached Gui Yuhua. You should know that she only played a role in A Dream of Red Mansions last year, not the protagonist. Although there was a lot of confusion in his heart, Manager Huang did not show it. He put down the water and returned to his seat. "I have something presumptuous to ask Mr. Wan. There are many actresses in Lidi. Since you are Lidi's screenwriter, you should prioritize inviting them to act. How could you suddenly find Miss Guo?" Wenjun quickly shook his head and said, "This play has nothing to do with Li's. After careful consideration, we thought Miss Guo was very suitable for the female lead in this play, so we invited her to participate. Overall, there is also a strong connection between Guo Yuhua and Li's television. After studying at RB, she was invited by Li's TV 2 years ago to return to Hong Kong to host a television program. Last year, she was also portrayed as a couple on screen by Leslie Chung. Director Huang couldn't hear much information from Wen Jun's words, he only knew that this play had nothing to do with Lide. Can I know what scene Mr. Wen is filming? Director Huang continued. It's a kung fu movie. There's nothing to hide, even if we don't say it now, they will know when it's released later. Originally, manager Huang thought that what Wen Jun wanted to film with Guo Yuhua was mostly comedic or modern urban films, but he didn't expect to ask her to make kung fu films, which is quite curious. You should know that Guo Yuhua is not proficient in martial arts and has never filmed any martial arts scenes, as can be seen in her later role in the sequel to The Legend of the Condor Heroes. Oh. Director Huang nodded and didn't think much. He guessed that the character Guo Yuhua was invited to play was mostly a vase-type character. However, as mentioned earlier this year, it is important to focus on cultivating Guo Yuhua into a new generation of teenage celebrities, so manager Huang is not very willing to agree to this loan agreement. When Jun noticed that manager Huang was not speaking, he turned to look at Lin Daoqiu and didn't know what to do now, but Lin Daoqiu just shook his head gently, signaling him to calm down. Both of you are very sorry, Miss Guo's schedule is fully booked this year, and we really can't spare time to lend her acting. Manager Huang shook his head and refused to lend Guo Yuhua. But he is clearly lying, because apart from the sequel to The Legend of the Condor Heroes, which was released at the end of the year, Guo Yuhua's other films are not very many, and they are not as fully booked as director Huang said. Moreover, the efficiency of filming in Hong Kong is very high. Apart from the old guys at Shaw Brothers who strive for excellence, most people can complete a movie in a month. Upon hearing this, Wen Jun suddenly became anxious. He instinctively turned back to look at Lin Daoqiu, as if waiting for him to make a decision. At this point, manager Huang had already realized that the person who really made the decision was not Wen Jun, but Lin Daoqiu behind him. After entering the door, when Wen Jun finished introducing himself, Huang, the supervisor, initially thought that Wen Jun was the real decision-maker, but unexpectedly it was the young person who came with him. Director Huang, I only need to lend Miss Guo a month's time, and I believe it won't delay her filming other movies. Originally, Lin Daoqiu didn't want to appear, but since director Huang had already discovered it, he had to step forward. I have already said that Miss Guo's schedule is already full, please do as you two do. Manager Huang was a bit unhappy and didn't even think about rushing someone. I feel like I'm being looked down upon by Lin Daoqiu. If not, why did he hide behind me instead of talking to me from the beginning? This is obviously because he looks down on himself. As far as I know, Miss Guo has not appeared in any other movies since she starred in the movie Dream of the Red Chamber last year. Director Huang just said that Miss Guo's schedule has expired, which seems incorrect. This is an internal secret of the company, there's no need to tell you that an outsider knows. I'm telling you again, Miss Guo doesn't lend it out. If you don't leave, I'll call for security. Lin Daoqiu shook his head. The attitude of Huang, the supervisor, was a bit bad. He and Wen Jun discussed with him in a friendly manner from beginning to end, and he surprisingly treated them with this attitude. Director Huang, we really want to invite Miss Guo to perform in this play. Could you please help us? Wen Jun could only plead with the other party at this moment. Director Huang glanced at Wen Jun and said disdainfully, okay, since you are so sincere, we can lend it out for a month, 100,000 yuan. 100,000 yuan. Wen Jun stood up directly from his chair after listening. It's not an exaggeration to say that you can make a movie for 100,000 yuan now. Spending 100,000 yuan to hire an actress is simply a fantasy. Manager Huang is simply making things difficult for them. Not bad. If you want to lend Miss Guo out, it's also possible, but you have to pay 100,000 yuan. If you can't afford it, then I won't be able to help you. After Manager Huang finished speaking, his face was full of a proud expression. How rich and afraid. Fortunately, it didn't affect this time, but everyone should watch and cherish it. Could you please click on bookmark and recommend it? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Conditions for Forgiveness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Conditions for forgiveness. If they are really willing to spend 100,000 yuan to invite Guo Yuhua to play a role, then Director Huang has no reason not to agree. However, unless Lin Daoqiu's mind had gone crazy, he would never have spent such a large amount of money to invite Guo Yuhua. If anyone knew about it, they would laugh at others for being foolish and having more money. If he really spent 100,000 yuan to hire Guo Yuhua, how much would it cost to hire Yuan Biao? If Yuan Biao found out that Guo Yuhua received 100,000 yuan in film remuneration, he would definitely be very unhappy in comparison. Manager Huang, is there no room for negotiation? Although Lin Daoqiu was very angry about Manager Huang's difficulties, he still forced himself to calm down first. Manager Huang sneered and said, haha. Haven't I already made the terms? Either you give me 100,000 yuan and I'll sign the contract immediately, or we can waive the negotiation. Lin Daoqiu doubted whether he had a grudge against Manager Huang before, otherwise how could the other party have made things difficult for them? It's really hard to understand. It is impossible to spend so much money to sign Guo Yuhua. It can be said that there is nothing to discuss about this matter anymore. However, Lin Daoqiu wanted to work harder in the end, but his words immediately angered Director Huang. Lin Daoqiu asked Director Huang, I'm not sure if I can see Miss Fang. This sentence made Manager Huang frown at once. He didn't want Fang Yihua to know about this matter, because once she found out, Fang Yihua was very likely to agree to lend Guo Yuhua out. You should know that Fang Yihua is famous for being frugal. Many directors of Shaw Brothers have suffered from her. Initially, Li Hanxiang's film needed 10 bamboo tubes to blow bubbles, which cost only 10 yuan, but Fang Yihua only approved 5. Fang Yihua will never refuse anything that can create profits for the company, and coupled with Guo Yuhua's lack of popularity in the film industry, Director Huang cannot think of any reason why Fang Yihua would refuse. Miss Fang won't see you, you've lost this heart, right? Huang, the supervisor, won't let Lin Daoqiu and the others go to see Fang Yihua. He even immediately picked up the phone and called for security to come in and rush people. I didn't expect to be kicked out of Shaw's company the first time I arrived. Lin Daoqiu didn't have time to lament for too long, and the 2 security guards had already arrived at Manager Huang's office. Looking at the door with a fierce gaze on himself and Wenjun's security, he could only stand up and shrug at Director Huang. Okay, since Director Huang hates us so much, I don't have much to say. Director Huang snorted coldly and said to the security guard, drive them out. These 2 people are here to cause trouble. Upon hearing this, Bao Quan immediately stepped forward and pretended to take Lin Daoqiu and Wenjun out, but Lin Daoqiu waved his hand first and said, don't bother you two, we will leave on our own. Under the escort of security, Lin Daoqiu and Wenjun could only walk out honestly. I thought today's trip was for nothing, but to Lin Daoqiu's surprise, while descending the stairs, he suddenly saw Guo Yuhua and a woman walking up. Miss Guo, I didn't expect us to meet again. Lin Daoqiu greeted Guo Yuhua with a bitter smile on his face. As soon as Guo Yuhua saw Lin Daoqiu, he immediately showed a surprised expression on his face. She didn't expect to meet him here. Is what Lin Daoqiu said to her at the bank yesterday true? Nyo, who is this? Asked the woman next to Guo Yuhua. Oh. He. Who is he? Guo Yuhua didn't even ask Lin Daoqiu's name yesterday, so she didn't know how to address him. My name is Lin Daoqiu, and I'm here to invite Miss Guo to star in a movie. Lin Daoqiu turned around and glanced at the 3rd floor before continuing, but the supervisor here said they had to pay 100,000 yuan to sign the contract, so I couldn't afford it and was kicked out. Gui Yuhua, along with the women around her, almost simultaneously showed surprised expressions on their faces when they heard Lin Daoqiu's words. How could this be? Gui Yuhua couldn't believe what Lin Daoqiu said. There were only a few actors who could earn 100,000 yuan for Xiao Shi's filming, and she was just a newcomer. How could she possibly earn 100,000 yuan? Miss Gua, I can testify that what Qiu Gu said is true. Wen Jun quickly stood up, as he had a few encounters with Gui Yuhua. Screenwriter 1, why are you here too? Gui Yuhua just didn't notice that Wen Jun was also here. If she doesn't believe what Lin Daoqiu said, but now even Wen Jun has said so, it proves that Lin Daoqiu is not lying. Wen Jun explained, I am one of the screenwriters for this play. Upon hearing this, Gui Yuhua nodded. However, the woman next to Gui Yuhua wearing glasses immediately showed a serious expression on her face after listening to Lin Daoqiu and Wen Jun's words. You guys go do something first, she said, asking the security guard to leave. The two security guards didn't even ask a word and obediently left. Lin Daoqiu doesn't know the woman in front of her, and it doesn't seem like she's an actress. After all, her appearance is very ordinary, but from her temperament, she should be a member of Shaw's management team. Hello both, my name is Shi Wenyan and I am the assistant manager of the procurement department. Shi Wenyan introduced herself to Lin Daoqiu and Wen Jun. Upon hearing this, Lin Daoqiu couldn't help but be secretly surprised. You should know that the manager of the procurement department at this time was Fang Yihua. Since she was Fang Yihua's assistant, no wonder those two security committees were so obedient. Gui Yuhua looked at Shi Wenyan with a worried expression on his face. If this matter of exorbitant film remuneration were to be spread, would anyone dare to invite her to film in the future? This has a huge impact on her. Could you please give me some time? I'll go and find out what exactly happened right away. Nyo, please accompany them for a chat for a while, and I'll be there as soon as I go. Shi Wenyan is going to ask manager Huang why he offered Lin Daoqiu such an outrageous price. Although it is reasonable to say that the procurement department cannot manage the affairs of the drama department, Shaw Brothers Film Company is at the mercy of the procurement department at this time. After Shi Wenyan left, Gui Yuhua looked apologetically at Lin Daoqiu and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Lin. There must have been a mistake in this matter. Don't be angry for now. Sister Wenyan will soon investigate the matter thoroughly. How could you make me not angry? It's really outrageous. He's just bullying people. I came with sincerity, and in the end, he forced me to stay safe and drive me out. Lin Daoqiu pretended to be very angry and made Gui Yuhua so anxious that she didn't know what to say. She was just an 18-year-old girl, but she had never encountered such a thing before. Feeling at a loss, Gui Yuhua opened her mouth and didn't know what to say. She could only cast a distressed look at Wen Jun next to her, hoping that he could help explain to Lin Daoqiu. Miss Gua, it's not really Qiuga's fault for this matter. That supervisor Huang is really despicable. He has a bad attitude and even offers prices recklessly. It's clear that he wants to kill you. Wen Jun was also enraged by supervisor Huang, and how could he possibly help him speak up? I'm sorry. I didn't know such a thing would happen, but I can guarantee that there won't be another time. Gui Yuhua could only apologize to Lin Daoqiu and Wen Jun repeatedly, looking as if she was so anxious that she burst into tears. Lin Daoqiu suddenly turned his head to look at Wen Jun and said, Didn't you say you wanted to go to the restroom? Hurry up and go now. Wen Jun's eyes widened slightly. When did he say he wanted to go to the restroom? However, he was still a prominent person. After a moment of surprise, he quickly nodded and said, Not bad. I almost forgot if Qiu Gu didn't say it. I'll go to the restroom first and you can talk. After Wen Jun left, Lin Daoqiu turned to Gui Yuhua and said, If you agree to have dinner with me, then I'll treat it as if nothing has happened. If other men had said this to her, Gui Yuhua would have turned around and left long ago, and what made her unhappy was that Lin Daoqiu's request at this time was clearly taking advantage of the situation. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. There is also such a good thing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. There is also such a good thing. If I don't agree, what does Mr. Lin plan to do? Gui Yuhua frowned lightly, with an unhappy expression on her face, indicating that she didn't like being threatened. If Miss Gui doesn't agree. Lin Daoqiu suddenly stopped and showed a wicked smile. But he quickly shrugged again and put on a casual expression, saying, then I can't force you to agree. Originally, Gui Yuhua thought that Lin Daoqiu was going to use this matter to blackmail her, but he didn't expect the other party to have such thoughts. It seems that he is not a very annoying person. If Mr. Lin wants to invite me to film, I would be happy, but if you have any other ideas, then I advise you to just let this heart die. The dissolution of the engagement between Gui Yuhua and Lin Jianyue has just passed, and at this time, she will not easily accept the pursuit of others. Miss Gui is too worried. I don't want to have dinner with you because I want to pursue you. I just want to talk to you about this drama. Lin Daoqiu suddenly put on a serious expression and said, I admit Miss Gui is very beautiful and has a good figure, but I am not someone who can't walk around when she sees a woman. Gui Yuhua was a bit confused about what kind of person Lin Daoqiu was. Just now, he had a playful and smiling face, but suddenly in the blink of an eye, he looked very serious again. Which one is the real him? Gui Yuhua, who was a bit dazed by Lin Daoqiu, didn't know how to answer him for a moment and could only stand there staring blankly at him. It has to be said that being stared at by such a beautiful woman all the time can indeed make people's hearts race and feel like they are almost blushing. Lin Daoqiu quickly spoke up. If anything I said before made Miss Gui feel uncomfortable, I apologize to you here. Gui Yuhua shook his head. In fact, Lin Daoqiu didn't do anything that made her feel uncomfortable. Previously, she just misunderstood the other party's intention to approach her using the excuse of making a movie. I'm sorry, Mr. Lin. I was too suspicious. I thought you, like those people, wanted to approach me in this way. I apologize that I'm not you. Gui Yuhua lowered her head in shame, showing a look of embarrassment. In fact, she was just a very simple person, but because of her previous engagement to Lin Jianyue, she was very wary of men who approached her. At this moment, Shi Wenyan had already walked out of the office with Director Huang. Compared to the previous arrogant and haughty appearance, Director Huang lowered his head, as if a primary school student had done something wrong. Mr. Lin, I'm sorry, I've already asked about the whole process. Shi Wenyan turned around and looked at Huang Zhudao expressionlessly. He violated the company's regulations, so I brought him over to apologize to you. I'm sorry, Mr. Lin. I was just talking nonsense. Your Excellency has a lot of knowledge, so please don't share it with me. It was obvious that Manager Huang spoke with a trembling tone. If among the people who cannot be offended by Shaw brothers, Fang Yihua is undoubtedly ranked first and her assistant Shi Wenyan is ranked second. At first, Manager Huang thought he wouldn't be discovered, but in the blink of an eye, Shi Wenyan killed him in his office. Even if he tried to argue, it was useless. After all, Lin Daoqiu and Wen Jun are currently outside. If it weren't for Lin Daoqiu and Wen Jun coming to find him first, Manager Huang would have suspected that he actually knew Shi Wenyan or Fang Yihua for a long time. Otherwise, how could she have known so quickly? Manager Huang, you don't need to be polite. It's my fault that I can't agree to the terms you offered. If you speak up, it's still my fault. Lin Daoqiu didn't intend to spare this guy. After all, he was not a generous person by nature. Upon hearing Lin Daoqiu's answer, Manager Huang looked up with a look of grievance, but he may have forgotten how arrogant he was when he was in the office before. Mr. Lin, I am very sorry about this matter. To express our apologies, I have agreed to Nyo Nyo's loan agreement, and the cost is completely free. I hope Mr. Lin can accept our company's apology. Lin Daoqiu didn't expect Shi Wenyan to be so generous and willing to lend Gui Yuhua for a month for free, which really surprised him. You should know that Fang Yihua is notorious for being stingy and stingy. If she knew about this, Lin Daoqiu was worried that the other party might not agree. Of course I have no objection, but Miss Fang. Lin Daoqiu stretched his voice, obviously worried that Fang Yihua would not agree. Miss Fang, I will go and tell her that as long as Mr. Lin has no objections, we can sign the contract now. From Shi Wenyan's words, it seems that she has great confidence in convincing Fang Yihua. Lin Daoqiu naturally wouldn't refuse such a good thing. He turned to look at Gui Yuhua and asked, I don't know if Miss Gui is willing to play in my play. I have already said before, as long as the company does not object, then I have no problem. Gui Yuhua gave his answer without even thinking. But if it weren't for the previous conversation with Lin Daoqiu and the presence of a familiar screenwriter Wen Jun, I'm afraid she wouldn't have agreed so decisively. If that's the case, then there's nothing I can refuse. Thank you very much, Miss Shi. Lin Daoqiu smiled and extended his hand to Shi Wenyan. You go and draft the contract now, and as for your punishment, I will report it to Miss Fang later, and she will make the decision. Shi Wenyan did not have the right to dispose of a supervisor, and these still have to be handled by Fang Yihua. When Huang, the supervisor, heard that Shi Wenyan was going to report this matter to Fang Yihua, he was instantly frightened and fell to the ground. Fang Yihua should know that he was likely to be fired from Shaw Brothers. Don't look at me like this, you should be very clear about the company's regulations. Whoever makes a mistake will be punished. You are like this, and I am like this. Even though Director Huang looked at her with a pleading expression, she remained indifferent, almost like Fang Yihua. Manager Huang shook his head, stood up obediently, and then turned to draft the contract. He was well aware that his time at Shaw's was probably running out. After Manager Huang left, Shi Wenyan turned to look at Lin Daoqiu and reminded him, Mr. Lin, although I promised to lend Nyo, there are a few things I need to clarify with you first. Miss Shi, please speak, Lin Daoqiu nodded. Nyo is a newcomer that Shaw Brothers is planning to promote, so in your movie, her character cannot have vulgar or nude scenes. Once such a situation occurs, we will destroy your film and also claim compensation from you. Many movies nowadays use this kind of gimmick to attract audiences, even Shaw herself has many such scenes. Shi Wenyan is afraid that Lin Daoqiu will take advantage and deliberately let Gui Yuhua shoot some scenes selling meat. If such a situation occurs, Gui Yuhua will be labeled as a sexy actress, which is completely opposite to Shaw's original intention of cultivating her into a teenage star. If Shi Wenyan didn't say that Gui Yuhua wouldn't have thought of it, but her words made Gui Yuhua somewhat worried. If Lin Daoqiu really wanted to shoot those shots, would she agree or not? Miss Shi, don't worry. I, Lin Daoqiu, am not interested in making such a movie. You can include all of this in the contract, but since you have something in mind, I have something to tell Miss Gui first. Upon hearing that Lin Daoqiu couldn't take those shots, Gui Yuhua breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. As long as she didn't take those shots, she had nothing to worry about. The female lead in my play will be very hardworking, Miss Gui better think first. What I want is not just a simple vase. The female lead in my play has a heavy martial arts scene, and Lin Daoqiu is worried that she won't be able to endure the hardship, which will cause trouble. Although Gui Yuhua looks weak, she is not someone who easily gives up. She raised her head and said firmly, Mr. Lin, please rest assured that as long as the plot is reasonable, I will definitely cooperate with you unconditionally. That's settled then. Lin Daoqiu smiled and extended his hand to Gui Yuhua. When shaking hands with the other party, for some reason, Gui Yuhua always felt like she was being targeted by something, which made her feel a bit inexplicably anxious. I received a signed text message in the afternoon, so I went out to print the contract and send it by express delivery. When I returned, I found a power outage, so I uploaded it late. Please forgive me. Can you come to Bow Collection to recommend investments and celebrate? Momoda. End of this chapter.